Well, here we go. I know it's not the usual intro to Now and Next, but I just figured, given the season, we are recording this session on the 18th day of December, so only a few more sleeps until the big day, which around our house is really Boxing Day because it's the most embarrassing day of the year when you actually have to take all that crap out to the curb and really show what kind of a mess you made and how you overindulged and all that kind of stuff at Christmas. But here we go. It is the ultimate episode of Now and Next for 2024. And we're lucky to have the cast is in here. That is our comms and strategy team. Of course, Anne-Marie Aikens is here. She's back off the Via train and back in her home studio. Bob Reed is here from Broadway Strategy and Communications. The queen of comms, Lindsay Broadhead, is here. And Brad fucking Ross is also in the house. Yes, they are the cast. It is the comms and strategy team here on Now and Next, and we're happy to have them. And this is a great way to kind of wind up the year. So why don't we get right to it? Because the story of the week is obvious. But there are a few other things we want to talk about. Also, some of the adventures that have kind of gone on in your lives. But I also want to pick your brains on sort of the stories that you guys think we should be watching for, because there's always a few on the horizon that kind of catch us by surprise. We had more than our share this year. But just want to go quickly around the table and get a quick reaction on, what happened, when you heard the news at, I don't know, was it 9:08 on Monday morning, Anne-Marie, that, the finance minister, the deputy prime minister, has actually done a Phil Verster and given two thumbs up or two birds to the prime minister and just created this incredible level of political chaos for a government that was already in free fall.
Oh, yeah, I said, like everyone else, holy shit. And my immediate next thought was, well, who's delivering the budget? Like what's going to happen? I don't like Canadian politics that goes off the rails like this. I know it's fun to watch when it happens in the US or other countries, but I don't like it here. I didn't like it even when Rob Ford was in power, the uncertainty, the destabilization, the lack of leadership. I didn't like it. And I would very much like to return to boring Canadian politics. So I felt destabilized. So that was my initial reaction.
Yeah, well, Bob, it felt like I was watching sort of a BBC political drama, because this is the kind of thing, that they would actually create a drama series around, and because it happens all the time in the UK, you get all that sort of palace intrigue in the House of Commons and in the governing side, but it doesn't happen here.
No, this is supposed to be the Death Valley days, in the run up to Christmas, when everything gets boring and shuts down and we don't have any bumps in the road anywhere. It was a holy shit moment for sure, and unprecedented, as so many have said. Every government has its gadflies, has its rebels, has its pain in the ass caucus members that you learn to deal with, you learn to manage, you learn to put up with. But to have number two, to have the most loyal, stalwart soldier, Minister of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister, pull the pin on a grenade like that at the 11th and a half hour of what was supposed to be her big day, and to say, screw it, I'm out of here, I'm not going to take this, I'm not going to do it, and you're on your own. Oh, and by the way, here's a letter that says we can ill afford these political gimmicks that are being put forward by this government, and I can't abide it. Forget it. I'm done. Wow.
Well, wow, for sure. I mean, Lindsay, I had to wonder two things. First, it appears as though the PM and the PMO caught off guard, like completely off guard on this. And we'll get into the circumstances that led to that. But I got to wonder what her staff was feeling like on, Sunday evening, because this sounded really like a fuck you. I'm not putting up with this bullshit anymore.
Yeah, it was. This is a woman who has, Bob just said it, had the prime minister's back with total resolve. She had been thrown under the bus. Her leadership was in question on a few different occasions, and she consistently came back with, you know what, I have the support of the prime minister, I'm told, and I support the prime minister. So this was the push too much, and we've all been there when it's just one thing too much. So it's gross. You can't treat your team this way, and in that regard. But she certainly had the last word. What caught me kind of directly was the extent to which people know Chrystia Freeland. I was in an office, and again, like with a lot of politicos, but a lot of people who are not affiliated with politics, don't follow it. They were all shocked. They all knew the meaning of this. And that tells me that she represents far more than just the finance minister. People know what kind of role she played in that government.
Yeah, Brad, the question around, the effect on the government, et cetera, is one thing. But to Lindsay's point, I heard, some of the streeters in her riding. Is it University Rosedale, I think is the riding that she's in downtown Toronto. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of, wow, didn't see that coming, and support for her in that specific area. Now, having said that, two things. I thought the communications in her letter were extraordinary. Like that was a well-crafted, pointed, exceptional piece of writing in that letter pointed at the prime minister.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was, so you asked where we were at the time, where were you when? And I was actually driving with my daughter back from Halifax. I went to pick her up for the holidays, and we were driving back when all this news broke. And so I tried to figure out how can I listen to the news here now, and so ended up streaming through my phone through the car radio, CBC News Network, and so basically we just listened to this all day, this drama, sort of very UK-ish, as you say, Dave. And one of the things I kept hearing about was some of the trouble that Freeland had with communications, and I thought to myself, this letter. It sort of defies that the political gimmickry. I think that is one that will go down for the ages as more than just a shot across the bow, as one that will probably define the end of this government. When that will be, presumably we'll talk more about that. But yeah, it was a very well crafted letter, and got the attention, as we know, of a certain someone just south of the border as well.
Well, yeah, and that just added fuel to the trolling fire that was the Trump's standing,
which
over
continues,
the
by the way, even at 3:30 this morning, it continues. Yeah,
and that's that in and of itself, I think, is one of those things that a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the trip down to Mar-a-Lago, Bob, and how that made the prime minister look good. He was prime ministerial. It was coming off the rails, though. And last week, when he was making the comments about being a proud feminist, he had to have known already, if he hadn't already had the conversation with Freeland, that he was going to fire her.
Well, and the reporting that's coming out, now says that was entirely the case. And the message was conveyed on Friday. And by the way, Mark Carney's going to get your job. And now Trudeau's 0 for 2 on both of them. I'm wondering if maybe he's got eyes on managing the Toronto Blue Jays through their winter meetings. He's come up completely empty on this. And what's really fascinating to ponder is how much ego times hubris does it take to go to your most trusted supporter, your most trusted lieutenant, and say, very soon, you're not going to have the job you have anymore. I'm going to replace you with an outside superstar. And by the way, I want you to stand up in the House on Monday and deliver the economic statement that you and I have been fighting about for a couple of weeks now that you have zero faith in. Can you do that for me? Let's do that, shall we? to have the sense of invincibility to dump that on somebody and be surprised when they say "fuck you," that's really something.
Yeah, Emery, it just strikes me as this guy is completely tone deaf on so many levels, and I don't know. It's easy to say he's not coming back from it. That's obvious. But the end is becoming very ugly, painful, slow, and I don't get it. There is not going to be a poetic walk in the snow for this Trudeau.
Yeah. No, I got my sweatshirt from him, from Mr. Trudeau, because if he was a favorite child to anyone left, he certainly isn't anymore. And you could tell by the fact that he made no comment that day that he was really, really caught off guard. But I read that letter carefully several times because it was an example in good, solid communications. It was a solid "fuck you, Trudeau, I'm not taking this anymore." But it also was the launch, I believe, of her leadership campaign. It was every line you could tell was very strategic in there. And so she doesn't have to own that the state of the finances, and that she's looked like a leader, and that this part doesn't hurt her. Because if she just delivered that financial statement on Monday after this had happened, she wouldn't have looked like a leader. And now she is looking like a leader, and she's looking like kind of, very brave and courageous. And Trudeau is looking weak. He's looking, after his success with Trump, I think he's now looking very, very weak. And I think he's just figuring out a way to get out of this as quietly as he can. I don't know how you can do that when the whole world is actually watching. And that certainly Trump is watching awfully carefully. But I think Trump, he doesn't want to have to face Freeland as a prime minister. So I think that's what the criticism came there. But I think it's a matter of time. I thought it would be by the end of the first day, but perhaps over the Christmas holidays when he's at home thinking about things. But on a very personal level, when you think of what he must be going through emotionally, and what everyone in the Liberal Party must be going through emotionally, you have to really feel for people. They must be torn, and this is not the way they wanted to go into Christmas, for sure.
Well, last night they had their big Christmas party as we record this. It's a Wednesday, so last evening with the caucus in Ottawa gathered, and there was no real serious attention to the crisis that was going on. And just to hear the prime minister, it was just nothing really to worry about. We'll get through this.
Like most families, sometimes we have fights around the holidays. But of course, like most families, we find our way through it. I love this country. I deeply love this party. I love you guys. And love is what families are all about.
I love you guys too.
Ooh,
I've given that speech before at my big family functions. I'm sure word for word.
Dave,
were you
what?
I probably was drunk. I love you guys. I just love you.
When I hear politicians invoke family like that in a crisis, it brings to mind a certain family, and that's the Manson family. And this party is completely
not where I thought you were going, Brad.
Completely off the rails here. And he is, I think you said earlier, is tone deaf. I mean, there are no political or communication instincts left in the PMO. I don't know what's happening there. He has gone completely insular, I can assume, and just becoming defensive and surrounding himself with he's in an echo chamber. I think to do what he did to Chrystia Freeland and not anticipate what she did is zero confidence now in if you had, politically we talk about no confidence. I don't know anybody other than those closest to him who have confidence in this prime minister now.
Well, when we look at that level of confidence, and all of the analysis on Monday was, oh, what's going to happen? Are they going to have a confidence vote? Well, of course, if you looked at the calendar, you knew that wasn't going to happen. The House is now in recess for the Christmas break. That'll be weeks and probably a couple of months by the time they get back, etc. So all of this playing out against the backdrop of what's happening in the States, Bob, really puts an interesting twist on this. If this had happened just in and of itself in a normal political year, it would have been critical. Having it bang right into inauguration in, a month from a couple of days from now, boy, that all of a sudden puts a huge glare on this crisis.
Yeah, doubly so. And no wonder Trump is teeing off on it and sniping away like he's doing. He was never a huge fan of Trudeau to begin with, and seeing the wheels falling off like this, he can't help himself but get in there and stir the pot and take a few more shots. Yeah, the last thing we need for this country right now is the degree of instability that we have. It was bad enough before. This is clearly a government that's on its way out at some point. It's clearly a government that is past its best before date. It's lost its way. It's lost the support of the people. It's lost its own core vote. So that's about as bad as it gets. But now to have this watershed moment really puts us behind the eight ball in so many ways on that. And of course, everything now is going to be a look ahead to January 20th and Trump being officially handed the reins of power in the U.S. And where does Canada sit on that? I read some reporting this morning that I guess speculates, but probably is right, that Trudeau's planning on going to the inauguration and being there and being the representative of the country. I mean, yeah, that's appropriate, and it would be bad if he didn't. But to try and do that with a straight face, I guess the only thing that's going to get him through that, if he's still here at that point, remains to be seen, is what has gotten him through everything else. And that's the fact that he drinks his own Kool-Aid. He believes that he is as invincible as he portrays himself to be. I mean, we saw that clip from the caucus party last night. Like, yeah, this is no big deal. This isn't anything, because look at me. I'm still here. I'm still in charge. That's what I expect we will continue to see from him, because that's his self-defense mechanism. That's his way of just powering through this stuff. But it's unsustainable in the long term, obviously.
Well, and just a reminder, his birthday is December the 25th. So this kind of seeps in, right? Lindsay, the fallout in Ottawa is one thing, but there is a lot going on here in this city of Toronto that has a great deal of connection and immediacy and urgency around funding and agreements with the federal government. An early election would kind of jam up some of the expectations that City Hall has around some of the funding that we would be getting from the feds, refugees, homelessness, that sort of thing. So this only makes things worse, because I think in many respects, Chrystia Freeland was viewed as not only a strong partner with Doug Ford, but a strong partner with Mayor Chow.
Yeah, there have been incredible bridges built between the different layers of government, and I think it's kudos to all players. Frankly, it's good when there are strong connections between the different governing parties, because more stuff gets done. We know that Mayor Chow and the current sitting council, one of their priorities is a New Deal, fiscal strength, right? A lot of talk has been focused on cities, not just Toronto, but municipalities' inability to fund themselves. And then when we've had the influx, I think Toronto is the best case in point of higher levels of immigration that was ever anticipated or our system could hold, when our housing is behind schedules, when our economics is deteriorating, having everyone work together and having those funding pools clear, so that they're clear to go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. That's what needs to happen to address all of those problems. One thing I learned anyway when I was working for the city that I found interesting was that municipalities have to pay the bill first before they can put the receipt back to the province or to the feds. So that's a lot of upfront payment to cover these things, and to have the security knowing it's coming down the pipe is essential. So these relationships matter. I don't know if all hung on Chrystia Freeland or not, but certainly the chaos and the blinders that are up right now in Ottawa, people aren't thinking about the cities now, I imagine, though I hope people are ready with the pen to sign checks before they leave, if there's going to be more people leaving. But we're hitting the holidays, we're hitting the dead end of the year, and cities need to get those funds that they've been promised. So fingers crossed.
Well, particularly, Brad, this time of year, we're into the serious budget planning at the city right now. So, and last year we were all screaming and yelling about the possibility of a 10 or 9% tax increase, with all of that upfront, cash that's being spent on federal and provincial programs. That puts extraordinary pressures on a government that can't run a deficit.
Right. And the success of any mayor, I think it's fair to say, rests on the successful relationships they build with other orders of government. And I think we've seen Mayor Chow do that successfully with Premier Ford, as you noted, with Chrystia Freeland, who remains a Toronto MP. The Liberal caucus, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but is the vast majority of whom are, of the Toronto caucus are Liberals. And, I do, though, worry about things like the just announced Line 2 subway cars for the TTC, for example. And Chrystia Freeland fronted many of those announcements, and that money for Toronto. So, clearly, I think it's fair to say that a Pierre Poilievre government will be elected whenever this next election occurs. It's not clear to me how much of the commitments that are made in announcements like we've seen without the money actually having transferred hands will be honored. But yes, I think Mayor Chow has, just to sum all this up, Mayor Chow has done, I think, a very good job in managing those relationships with other orders of government, whether it's with the Premier, Prime Minister, or key ministers and others to advance the city's needs. That's where her attention needs to always be and is, and that's what mayors do. They bridge divides, political divides.
And Marie, when we look at the sort of that dominoes falling and the effect it would have on things as we point out, the homelessness, the shelter issue with refugees, it's worth pointing out that on Monday, two things happened around housing. Sean Fraser quit the cabinet in Ottawa. That got completely lost, but he was the minister responsible for housing. And then the mayor shuffled roles at City Hall, and Brad Bradford, who was the vice chair of the Housing and Planning Committee at City Hall, he's off there. So, and say what you will, everybody said, well, he was a rival of hers. He finished 8th in the freaking election. So seriously, and chances are he will put his hat in the ring for the next run at the mayor's chair to challenge her, but he's a planner. He's an urban planner. Isn't he a guy you would want in there? So this whole focus around saying Freeland is, going to write checks or was there for some of those check writing commitments is one thing. But in the background, this whole issue and concern around and commitment to building more housing seems to be more unstable than ever.
Yeah, that I am worried as well, as I share others' concerns that the commitments about immigration and housing in particular, as well as transit capital, may not be honored. They may not be without some of those financial commitments getting solidified at cabinet. I don't know if they even can be before an election. So. And I don't know a Poilievre government will honor those. I just don't know. So that's a lot of uncertainty. But at a local level, that Councillor Bradford was, I know he came 8th, but he was very effective at getting a lot of the media oxygen. He got their attention. He was very critical of Mayor Chow and spoke out a lot. And he had not only the planning committee, he was also on important agencies like Create TO. He lost that as well. He gave Mayor Chow gave all of his posts to Nunziata, who's the Speaker of the House again, who generally does whatever who's ever in leadership does. She usually votes with whoever is mayor. So chances are she's going to do whatever Mayor Chow wants her to do in all of those committees and not be this person that's chirping to the media. However, just taking Bradford off isn't going to shut him up. He's going to continue to be an advocate. He's going to continue to criticize what she has to say, her policies, the things that she does. So it isn't an effective way. I think he was probably more of use because he is an urban planner and very experienced and very passionate about housing as well. And he does have a lot of good ideas. He was probably more effective where he was. But we'll see. But guaranteed, the man is not going to be quiet. He's not going to go away. He's going to still be a bee in Mayor Chow's bonnet all the time, maybe even more now.
Yeah, Bob, it's like you strike me down, you make me all the more powerful kind of line, right? I mean, when we look at it, I think Anne-Marie's right. You're not gonna make Bradford just kind of sit in the corner as a shrinking violet. But again, I still think his voice on a committee like that is probably more important, more powerful in the context of the committee work.
Sure, but I think the mayor's already done the political calculus that this guy's not going to do me any favors. He will be a bigger pain in the ass if I leave him in place than he will, of course, continue to be with a different pulpit. So I'm not the least bit surprised by it. And nor do I expect that it's really going to change anything. Probably, as others have said here, will embolden him, will let him now even more forcefully declare himself as the unofficial leader of the opposition at City Council.
Yeah, that's great. That's just what we need to start a campaign this early for city council and mayor. Yes, that's the longest one anyway. But yeah, I think that's inevitable, and whether or not that's what's going on with Freeland or not, I know that everybody's looking at that saying she's already unofficially launched her leadership role, and the others will fall in line. Overarching the theme both at the feds and the city then becomes, if you get into that space, Brad, you're not getting anything done if you're campaigning.
You mean Freeland? Or
either way, right? I mean, Right now the government in Ottawa is not moving, is not doing anything. They're in the recess, and we get that. But even if they were, they have been just paralyzed by what's going on there. If we get to a point now where all of a sudden we fire the early starting gun at City Hall, you have the same kind of effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just on the Bradford, he was vice chair, so I mean, not overly powerful, but nevertheless, I think his side gig as an op-ed columnist for the Toronto Star probably got on Chow's nerves. I mean, why would you have bring somebody into your tent who's going to continually play the skunk? So you can hang around outside. And to Anne Marie's point, that's not going to stop Councillor Bradford from doing and saying what he does. I think, though, Dave, through all of this, all of that is going on right now, I think the vacuum of leadership that we're seeing in Ottawa, and I'm really surprised by the lack of communications from the PMO to be so silent on Monday was stunning to me. The vacuum has been filled by the premiers and in particular by Doug Ford. I think he's being fitted for a Captain Canada cape, I'm sure, and has, on Monday I listened as I was driving to a presser with Ford and the premiers of the country, really demonstrating leadership and banding together and doing a whole lot that, frankly, Trudeau and his Trudeau that the Prime Minister really should be doing at this point in time with Donald Trump a month away from inauguration and this 25% tariff thing hanging over our heads, whether it's real or not.
Well, I agree with you. I think the other issue, though, and it only emphasizes what everybody has said so far, Lindsay, is that the Prime Minister's inability or unwillingness to address this at any level, i.e. speak to the nation and tell Canadians, this is what we're up against, this is what we're doing, and to do it in a serious way is, to me, is the real mistake here, is the real sin. He has not done that. And now I don't think there's any putting that toothpaste back in the tube, period. Right. I don't think you come back from that.
And I guess I see the sin starting far earlier, right? Like I to be honest, I'm a little bit confused by the comments that he makes and others observe that he's gonna, he has a lot to think about. We've been thinking about this for ages, right? Like has he really at every turn never considered this as a path? Where if you take the Trudeau narcissist, has been in a vacuum of that echo chamber, then I guess not. He's always seen a path through, which makes me think, does he still see a path through, right? Is he still holding on for the fear that Trump will generate? Research has come out, I think it was Innovative Research came out with, if you're amongst the Canadians who are scared about the future of Trump, they still lean marginally more heavily to Trudeau. So while Poilievre knocks him out of the park on every other measure, we're still not sure about Poilievre. For those of us who are fearful of a Trump government, we're still not sure about Poilievre as the guy who will take us over that, through that relationship and over these hurdles at this critical juncture. So is Trudeau really going to lead us down this path for weeks and weeks more? I have no idea. I have no idea. We will see. There's as many theories of next steps as there are days and weeks ahead. So
before we go, I just want to go around the table and kind of hinted at the top, just in terms of something that you guys are looking at and saying, we should really be paying attention to this. This might be a low grade buzz right now, but it's something that's going to flourish or that we need to pay attention to in terms of how the story might develop in the next calendar year. Bob, what do you think?
Well, for me, it's I'm going to be Captain Obvious here, but it's all about elections in this country and Donald Trump south of the border and all over the world. I mean, that's where the balls are all going to land in 2025. We're going to have an election in Ontario, I expect, sooner than later. We're going to have one in Ottawa, I expect, sooner than later. And we're all going to have to deal with Donald Trump. And he is going to continue to stand everything on its ear as he bulls his way into the China shop after January 20th. So everything is going to be viewed through that lens, and simultaneously in the context of elections in Ottawa and in Ontario.
Anne-Marie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think next year is going to be a long, painful election season. And that worries me because elections, consume every politician. They don't do any work. And just when Donald Ford becomes officially in power, couldn't be a worse time for that.
You mean Donald Trump? You said Donald Ford. Just wanted to mix in the.
Dr. Freud's calling, Anne-Marie. Dr. Freud.
Your Freudian slip is showing. Yes.
But we get your point. Yeah.
That has Donald Ford. That's wonderful.
It did sound wrong when I said it, but it's a Fordian slip.
There you go.
Good one.
Anyways, yes, Trump will be the president of the United States, and we're going to have to deal with that. But everybody's going to be distracted with trying to get elected. And it's just when those elections are going to take place is they're all trying to jockey because Ford wants to get in there before before the federal election, but that could happen at any time. So it's probably like who's going to pull that ripcord first. The only thing that won't surprise me in 2025, we also have a municipal election in Toronto, because nothing is going to surprise me this time. But on another note, I think next year we're going to be dealing with more homelessness, because the fixes that we have in place now are going to take years. We have lots of fixes coming, but problems going to get worse. And I predict congestion is going to be even worse next year. So that's very specific Toronto problems, but that probably other people are feeling across the country as well.
Well, Brad Ross is going to feel it if he wants to come down from Barrie. So I mean, seriously, what are you thinking, Brad?
Well, I agree, and I'll be Bob's deputy captain. Obvious that elections and Donald Trump are going to certainly rule the political discourse. And I'll dive a little bit deeper with respect to the next federal election and just how divisive it may be, because we know that Pierre Poilievre's brand of politics is he doesn't play nicey nice. He spars with reporters. He takes them to task and tries to embarrass them to a degree, and that spills over into certain types of flags we see flying on the back of trucks and all of that. And so that does concern me a little bit. I'm worried about the country and how it's feeling. The other thing I'll say about 2025, and you can fight me to the death on this, is that Toronto Maple Leafs will be hoisting the Stanley Cup.
Oh,
there we go.
You heard it here first. Yes, and to your hat there, Dave.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I should say, for those of you listening on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, this is the gift I got last week at our old boys hockey Christmas party. We do a gift exchange, then you pull a name out of the hat and so on, or you go and grab a gift off the table. This started out as a bottle of 12-year-old scotch that somebody stole from me, and I had to go and bet. So I was quite happy to get the Maple Leafs cap, but I had the same feeling, Brad. All my years, I've never owned a Toronto Maple Leaf cap. This is a sign.
Oh, really? Oh, shit.
I'm just saying.
All right. Good.
I'd still be bitter about the scotch.
Yeah, I'd be better. Yeah.
Well, you took mine. I was going to lead with two fun ones, which is the Leafs are, this is their time. 1967 needs to be erased and a new banner needs to be hoisted. My second kind of lighter one is what is Taylor Swift going to do next? Because at this pace going up more and more prolific, what does one do? Do you press pause or do you keep going? And on a serious more political societal note, and it's connected, I think, to what we're all talking about, which is a new flavor of politics that's going to come through the door. Populism will take hold of our country in a way that I don't think we've ever seen before, and how parties have been traditionally defined and rooted are going to change. So there's a leadership gap here, and there's a political party branding gap here. It's a white space that will be filled by something else, and it's going to be intriguing to watch how it happens and rolls out, because it's going to have a new kind of pragmatism, that we're going to make different kinds of decisions. So Leafs, Taylor, populism.
There you go.
Not in that order.
I'm looking, at the way some of this is unfolding, and I would agree with everything you guys have said in terms of what we should expect on the landscape moving forward in the next 12 months. But one of the things that occurs to me, that there's going to be sort of a phased in view of what happens next with Trump. And that is to say, around the confirmation hearings, how are they going to play out? Because right now there's so much noise about who is capable, who should be kicked to the curb, who is he supporting and who is he trolling. All of those things will get played out once the confirmation hearings start. But as soon as his cabinet is in place, the next thing on the agenda for me is to watch how the midterm elections in the United States play out. And what's going to happen, I think, is it will determine how quickly Donald Trump becomes a lame duck president, because he's not going to be able to run again, or there may be an argument over that perhaps. But then the relationship with Ottawa becomes really interesting, because it's not just about Trump. It becomes a relationship with Congress. It becomes a relationship with the governors of the key states and so on. So for all the, rage and fury that Trump will bring to the White House, I agree. But I think there's a slow burn here in terms of how long the crazy is going to be in the White House and who's going to take over that. And it could be crazier than it already is based on the way things are going. So
I suspect.
Who gets
I'm
fired
hoping that
by
you've all
Twitter
got plans
first?
I'm hoping you've all got plans to take some time during the holidays. You got anything going on, Anne-Marie? I know that you could probably start now with the whole family if you were doing a family visit, right?
Well, we had to, in order to get as many of the siblings together as possible, we had to do it in October. So,
all right.
So that was the day we found. But so it didn't feel too Christmassy, but we have done that. But I have 3 boys and 5 grandchildren, and so I've got time spent with them. But even getting that unit together at the same time is challenging with the careers and locations where they live and so forth. But that's okay. It's just that many more times I get to have one of my boys cook for me, because they're all such good cooks, and I'm not such a great cook. So lots of family time and lots of girlfriend time to go for. We love getting dressed up and having drinks. So lots of fun times and I don't want to have to think about politics.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Lindsay, what do you guys got planned?
The kids are packed, and I'm going to my home away from home in Vancouver and spending a little time by the ocean in a very strange part of the United States called Point Roberts. I can't wait. It's going to be fun.
Very nice. Brad, what about you? Your daughter's home for the holiday?
Daughter's home for the holiday, just very quiet. We're going to drive back on New Year's Day back to Halifax, and then I'll fly home. Let's keep her company. We do that drive. And someone I know has a full Santa Claus costume, and he may visit the local hospital, RVH, up here on Christmas Eve. So if you're listening before Christmas Eve and you're looking for Santa, keep your eyes peeled.
Okay, well,
you send some photos too.
Sure.
His naughty and nice list, though, right?
Yes, they're all nice lists. No naughty.
I've met that Santa. He's pretty jolly.
Yeah, he's not a bad Santa. He's a good Santa.
Very good. Bob, how about you?
The usual, but I say that with great affection, which is low key, getting together with family. This will be an especially fun one because we have 2 new great nieces born this summer who will be experiencing their first Christmas. They've already seen, allegedly, Santa, Brad.
And
And
he's a magical guy.
that was as photo oppy as you can expect it would be. So it's going to be a great gathering with my brother's family and the little ones.
Very nice. Yeah, and I agree. It's funny how I'm working on The Promise, which is coming up this weekend, and it's doing extraordinarily well, and all in support of St. Clair Inn, and we've talked about that and what it does. And I think out of everything that we've talked about, to see people step up and somehow support that effort, support that group, providing transitional housing for homeless women here in Toronto, and going out of their way, particularly at this time of year, because you've all explained and everybody understands how bloody busy it is heading into this final weekend before Christmas. So for all of the hand-wringing and fretting we live, this really is a shining sign of hope for me, because the people have kind of put all the bullshit aside and they have stepped up and done great work and made great effort to support a place like St. Clair Inn. And I know that there are small and mighty nonprofits all over the place. Jennifer Ashley is another one. If you're looking for a children's charity, do that as well. But for those of you who are making those donations and support to some of those small community-based nonprofits that do important work, thank you. So, and thanks to the cast crew. So say Merry Christmas to Brad Ross, Anne-Marie Aikens, Lindsay Broadhead, and Bob Reed. We'll see you guys in the new year, and we're going to probably take a few weeks off anyway, but we're hoping to pick this thing back up once we flip the calendar into 2025. For those of you who are listening on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, leave us a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to it, because if we take a little bit of time off, you might forget we're here. But as soon as we're back in, the notification hits your inbox, and you'll be able to pick us up right where we left off. If you want more information about the two shows, Now and Next and On the Ledge, your Ontario Politics podcast, just go to my website, davetrafford.com, and you can get all the back shows and some of the stuff that you've missed, but all the current stuff as well. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. It's Now and Next. I'm Dave Trafford for Story Studio Network.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Now and Next is Story Studio Network's flagship podcast, produced by our chief executive producer, Dave Trafford, and supported by our entire SSN team, including our senior producers, Becky Coles and Jen Hudson, our technical producer and audio editor, Mike Trutler. Jamie Nickerson is our production manager, and our sonic logo designer is Greg McDonald. Also, I'm Erin Trafford, Queen of the Universe.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.
This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.